Hi, everyone. My name is Diana Gugliotta. I'm the Senior Manager of Public Affairs here at AAA Northeast. I want to thank you all for joining us this afternoon. There is no better time for AAA members to take advantage of the benefits of TrueCar than right now. So I want to thank Matt Jones and Nick Willard from TrueCar, as well as Ted Lyons, the Director of Financial Services at AAA Northeast, for joining in on a very timely conversation here today about car buying. And in case you didn't know, one of the many benefits, great benefits of your AAA membership is access to our partnership with TrueCar. We call it AAA's auto buying program. And our goal for this program is just to make the experience of purchasing and financing a vehicle as easy as possible so you feel prepared going in. And I'm going to be asking our panel of experts here the questions that our AAA members have been asking us. And for all of you joining this afternoon, please feel free to ask questions in the comments specific to you. If it's something real personal, we can always email you later on. But feel free to throw those comments up and we'll get to those questions at the end. So Ted, good afternoon.
Hi.
Hi there. I'm going to ask you to kick us off then and just sort of summarize for us what our members basically can expect from using TrueCar rather than just walking into a dealership.
Sure. Well, I think the biggest thing is that it's hassle-free. The amount of time that people spend going from dealer to dealer to dealer eats up, a day, a weekend, a month, and, it can be a harrowing experience. And, what TrueCar has done is kind of taken that all and brought it to your desktop. And, you can see different vehicles, you can see different layouts on cars and different pricing from different dealerships. And what it does is it takes the stress out of it. It can be a harrowing experience, and they make it kind of a stress-free, haggle-free process. And if you think about the auto dealer world, they're better at selling cars and we are at buying them. They sell more in a month than we'll buy in a lifetime. So, to have the information up front before you go in any part of the equation, whether it's the buying, the financing, and any of the after sale products, you got to kind of know before you go. And that's what this does. It really makes it transparent.
Right. So right from your desktop, laptop, cell phone, and you're absolutely right. Without this, it is an extremely time-consuming experience, and nobody's got that anymore, it seems.
More.
Right. So, I know inventory is low. We've been talking about this all year round about, the microchip shortages, but also the shortages and even the foams that make up vehicle seats and steel and all of that. So car buying is certainly more challenging this year. So I'm going to go to Matt and Nick for your comments on this. How much has this reduction in inventory impacted prospective buyers, in your opinion?
Nick, why don't you start?
All right, I'll go first. So if you haven't bought a car in the last year, things are going to look very different from what you've historically seen. Just to use nice round numbers, historically, there's about 4 million vehicles for sale on dealer lots, new vehicles for sale. Right now, there's about 1 million. So 3 out of 4 vehicles are missing. There's definitely a lot less inventory available. The inventory that is available is moving very quickly. So you see a car you like, you want to jump on it quickly because there's likely a lot of other people that might be looking at it at the same time.
And when you think about the new car differences, there's also a huge contingent of people who are out there in the market looking to buy used cars. And one of the most prevalent sources for a used car at a dealership is a person buying a new car and trading in their old car. And
Right.
so, the impact of the shortage of the new cars, at first, that was just where the conversation really was, but it's also spilled over to the used car market because that market is now seeing depleted inventory, and that's also changing the landscape of pricing. Sometimes it's good depending upon your position. Sometimes it's not quite as good if you're buying or selling. So, but these changes have affected the entire market for buyers and sellers alike.
Yeah, Matt, and it's important to actually, one of my friends, I was describing what you all do at TrueCar to a friend recently, and he didn't realize initially that you also show used car inventory as well as new car inventory. For some reason, there was that myth that it's just new cars, but it's great to be able to see both and compare.
It's interesting that nearly half of the deals that we help put together when we introduce consumers and dealers, nearly half of them are actually used cars. And your friend may not have been, your friend's not in the wrong for not knowing that, because that hasn't always been TrueCar's place traditionally. This has been a very conscious decision over the past 3 years or so to actually bring more used car buyers into the flow. So in the past, we were traditionally known as a platform for new car buyers and dealers to meet, but we've also transitioned over to used cars, and because there's a lot of people out there who are looking for those options as well.
That's great. If you don't mind, between the two of you, Nick and Matt, could you explain sort of the magic behind the platform? So in terms of being able to see inventory, is it every dealership in our area if we're searching, by zip code or geographically? How does that all work?
Right now, TrueCar works with about a third, roughly speaking, of dealers. So it's not every dealer within your market, but it's select dealers. And especially in a time with low inventory, it's nice to be able to cast a wider net and see more vehicles. So if the vehicle you're looking for isn't available necessarily at the closest, you can start looking around as well and removing those filters and looking further. So it allows you to do a lot more from home. And that's really, I think, what a lot of the magic is in this type of environment.
Neat. So if you don't see, your dream car in a 10-mile radius, you can go to a 50-mile radius, for example.
Exactly.
Really neat. Okay. Well, that's very helpful in doing all the homework for sure. So I can say honestly, once you've narrowed down, the brand, the model that you'd like, your very first stop should be to TrueCar. And I know that the folks behind the scenes are going to link you and add the link to AAA.com. We have a specific auto buying program page where you can power TrueCar up and do your homework. So, Ted knows this story. This year, my husband was looking to purchase a brand new Jeep, which I know you're a Jeep owner too, right? And my very first stop was to the TrueCar page. And it was just so interesting to be able to compare and contrast, models. And we really did find it so convenient in terms of being able to do our homework. Ultimately, we decided we're going to wait a little bit. It hurt just a little bit too much to bite into that purchase this year. So we did make that decision. But I'd love to hear your opinions. I mean, any of you who want to go first on whether or not you think members should wait before they are making a vehicle purchase. You want to go first, Ted?
Sure. It really comes down to a personal choice. And I think, it really depends on why. I would say buy a car when you want to buy a car and not when you have to buy a car. Because if you're going to wait until your car is broken in the driveway or at the dealer's, the dealer's service bay and it's going to cost you thousands, you're going to be at a big disadvantage to be able to search and find what you want, maybe, at the price you want with the options you want and so forth. So, doing your homework as soon as you start thinking about buying a car is really the way to go. Look at, what type of cars are out there, what they're going for, what the mileages are, if they're on the used side of things, what you qualify for in terms of finance. So it's one thing to say, oh, I want to get this car. It's another thing to be able to afford it, and Matt and Nick touched on the pricing of things, and both on the new and used car side, we're seeing, things going out there for over sticker and higher than what we saw a year ago. Want to be able to make sure you can afford it. So, knowing before you get there, we pre-approve people all the time, and they say, I want to go buy that new Jeep Gladiator, and they get pre-approved for a loan so that when they get to the dealer's lot, they're able to act. You have to pull that trigger when you get there. And these guys said, well, somebody's right behind you in line looking at that same car. And if you don't buy it, they're probably gonna, and then you're gonna start from scratch again.
Great point. Yeah. So part of doing the homework is definitely the qualification process.
Definitely.
And yeah,
Yep.
That's where you do your work best.
We try.
There's another aspect, like I'd like to just jump in on what Ted said. I think the idea of buying a car when you want to as opposed to when you need to is super, super important, because just like Ted said, you don't want to be thrown into a market that you're unprepared for. And somebody who stops in right now may not be prepared for this because, Nick, correct me if I'm wrong, the average car buyer jumps in every 7 or 8 years or so, and so their experience 7 years ago, if they haven't done their research, jumping into this could be quite a shock. So As we touched on the pricing implications for buyers, I think one thing that's also very important that people consider is that when they're doing their research and they're getting pre-approved and understanding their buying power, they're spending as much time, if not more, understanding the vehicles that they're considering. Because whatever vehicle you buy right now, because of the increases in prices, you're going to be married to that car for a while. So it's probably more important than ever to make sure that a person who's in the market is actually doing the proper research. They're test driving cars. They're not relying strictly and solely on the strength of reviews. They're getting in cars when possible, test driving them, finding out how those seats feel. Because if you're buying a car that's being sold for more than MSRP, and a lot of cars are being sold for more than MSRP, that really impacts your availability to trade it in 3 years from now or 4 years from now if things start to normalize. So while you are looking at cars, the suggestion that we've been giving to everybody is just pay very close attention to the vehicle itself. Make sure that you're purchasing the correct vehicle. I think in past years, people would buy a car, and if they didn't like it, they could trade it in within 2 years and they'd suffer a small, financial setback. No big deal. That's not the case right now. So make sure that you're doing your due diligence when you're inspecting the car as well.
That's a great point. Go ahead, Nick.
And yeah, I would agree with everything Ted and Matt said. And the only thing I would add is, behind that question is maybe another question of, will prices suddenly drop? Like, will this inventory suddenly resolve itself? And the answer is very likely not. It's going to take time to rebuild around 2 million units of inventory in dealer lots. And so we're not going to just suddenly see prices go back to where they have been historically. And on the same front, right now, if you're trading a vehicle, you're likely getting a pretty good deal or pretty good pricing on that trade. So that helps offset the burden a little bit if you're making a new purchase or even trading for a used as well. And then the third piece being financing and finance rates. Indications are rates may be increasing next year. And so financing is probably going to be a little bit better in the near term, but really I think it all boils down to buy the car when you want the car, when you need the car, because it's really hard to time all these other things. There's a lot going on.
Yeah, and Nick, you said it very well, and that's a question we've been getting from members is, if I have a trade-in right now, do I have the leverage to negotiate? And I think the answer is yes, from what you're saying.
Yeah, I think so. So used car prices are up about 30% year over year, and trades are roughly in line with that. And so that's nice to see that used car prices are higher, but for those that are trading, they're seeing that benefit go through to them as well.
Right. And Ted, let me ask you, just talking about the loan process, I have two questions basically. How should folks prepare to approach the auto loan process? And then, to your points, if people are, purchasing or leasing even a new vehicle every 7-8 years, I mean, vehicles are lasting a lot longer than they used to, right? Are you seeing a lot of our members looking to refinance their auto loans?
So I'll take the first question first. From an application standpoint, once people have it narrowed down to, a couple of models anyways, we tell people just put in an application. It is tied to a vehicle, but, essentially we get you pre-approved for a dollar amount. So if you come to us and say, I want to borrow, $25,000 on this car, we'll get you approved for that. And then we adjust it for the vehicles and so forth downstream once you settle on one. But at least, as a consumer, you have $25,000 in your pocket to play with, and what you're pre-approved for. So when you go to the dealer, oh, well, I have this amount in the trade. I know I have this amount in the loan, and I can afford this car because of, a couple of those factors. On top of which, it gives you a basis to compare, what the dealer may offer you for financing. In some cases, they have incentives out there with lower rate financing. Sometimes they don't, and you can kind of get the best of both worlds there. So, it's very simple. You can apply online. You can call us. Very, very easy to do in that regard.
You can do it right through our webpage as well,
yeah.
right?
Yep. Online, phone, tablet, the old computer for those people that still have them on their desktops, laptops. And now your second question is escaping me. It's like on the
about refinancing.
So refinancing, yes, we do quite a bit of refinancing. So in some cases, the dealership, they want you to take that car right then and there, and they want you to take their financing so that they know they sold it and it goes down the road. You don't always get the best rates in that case. And we have people coming back to us all the time, with refinances. So maybe we save you, half a point on your rate, and that translates into real dollars, and my coworkers here, somebody will always say, is it worth it to save $5? I don't know if I want to go through the trouble, but you wouldn't step over it on the sidewalk. If you saw a $5 bill, you'd pick it up. So why give that money to a bank? So we do that all the time. And then another thing we're seeing this year too is lease buyouts. So a lot of people that have leases, so you established this lease 2 years ago, 3 years ago, you have that residual value set, and then that's turning out to be a really, really good deal right now. For two reasons. One, that price was set 2 years ago before the year-over-year increases that we're seeing on the used car markets. And there's no inventory right now to go get another lease with. So, your options of finding another car to get into a lease is limited right now. So we're seeing a big jump in the number of people that are buying out their leases as well.
Okay.
Yeah. The other thing too, as it relates to research is, there are other products available, whether it's service contracts or tire and wheel coverages and things like that. And people can shop around for those ahead of time too, before they go to the dealership, so that they have another means of comparing, and possibly saving money.
Great. So I know historically, Matt and Nick, please feel free to speak to this. Year-end deals, always made for great December vehicle purchases, right? But I have a feeling there'll be fewer, vehicles sitting in driveways on Christmas morning with the big red bow on top. Are there still any deals out there for the hopeful among us?
There are some. I would say, looking back at this year, it's almost been backwards or upside down from the normal year. Normally, you see this nice gradual increase in savings off MSRP throughout the year. And a lot of it's tied to the model year changeover, where if you have a model year 21 next to a model year 22, they're probably going to have to discount the outgoing model to get someone to buy that over the 22. And this year we're just seeing savings and going down, really tied to the inventory issue. There are certain makes and models that buck that trend though. The inventory and the chip shortage did not affect everybody at the same time. So if you look around and shop around, you'll still see some of those 0% for 72 months and, $1,000 captive cash and different offers that are out there. But it's definitely less than we've seen in the past.
Okay. So I do have some questions coming in from our members here. One asked, I still have a loan on my vehicle, but would like to get another car. What are my options? Ted, you want to try to tackle that one?
Yeah. So, a couple of different ways. One, they can just trade the car into the dealership, and that's all factored into the new car purchase. So whatever balance that's left on that loan, if there's not enough equity in the trade, can sometimes be rolled into that new car purchase. They could sell it in the private market, so they can sell it, outright retail. Not a terrible idea right now with the way that the values of the cars are going, but there's also the issue that you're going to have to go through the trouble of doing it. So you got to list it on some site somewhere. You have to meet with countless numbers of people that are going to haggle and try to get you to reduce the price and so forth. So, a couple of different options, but it's definitely, people do it all the time. So it's just a matter of the metrics of that. And, we'll happily talk to people about that and if it makes sense or not too.
Yeah, and it's funny. I think there's less of an appetite for the haggling aspect, and that's why people love TrueCar so much, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Mary also asked, one of our members, if I want to buy a used car, should I look for my own loan or take wholesale offer loan? So, yeah, I think what she's trying to say is typically with used vehicles, are the rates pretty decent?
It can be. It all depends on the year of the car and the term that they're looking for, and then the member's credit too, right? So there's a component of that. Not every borrower is created equal. So the better your credit, the better the rates typically. The older the vehicle, the higher the rates typically. So new cars garner the best rates, smaller terms garner the best rates, and then they kind of float up from there. But we have rates that are in the low 2s right now for new cars, could even get into the high 1s in some cases, depending on the deals, and then they go up from there, but they don't rise massively. So, as you get to like a 10-year-old car or something like that, the rates are still in single digits. They're, maybe 5 or 6% ballpark. And it's not like a house. People have this misnomer about, the rate is going to massively change, my payment. It doesn't, because you're only doing it for 5, 6, maybe 7 years in a rare instance. And it's not for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Usually it's only for, $20,000, $40,000. So, it factors in, but not as wildly as it does on a home.
Great. Okay. We had another question for Matt. And Nick, I think you alluded to this already, but the question is, do you see an end to when these MSRPs will settle back down or normalize? And Nick kind of foreshadowed that for us. It's going to take a little while, right?
Yeah, that's my expectation. It's going to take a while. And what's also happened is with this, this market's been kind of in flux for the past 2 years. When we were in lockdowns, we had one weird environment, and now that we're out of lockdowns, we're having a different weird environment. And it's kind of hard to predict how that's going to affect how people actually sell, because normal has been 2 different things over the past, 24 months. There's some people who have said that there's rumors that, that production may not get back exactly to where it was in the past, right? So that there's a little bit, fewer cars than we've had, traditionally, which has led to really high incentives. So I think this is just going to be a waiting game. But as Nick alluded to, it is going to take time. That's going to be the magic thing when you've got, 75% of the cars missing. It's going to take time to ramp up to that. And then we also have to take some time for the new car inventory to get back to where it was. So the short version is not soon. Not soon. Yeah, not soon.
Yeah, we actually had a conversation yesterday with a gentleman who specializes in automotive forecasting, and he said the same thing. So we have consistent opinions here. Yeah, it's going to take a while to ramp back up. I don't see any other questions right now. So I'm just going to ask the 3 of you if you have any other last words of advice for our members in the market for a vehicle right now. Any good success stories that you want to share?
Well, I'll start.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I think what's been very interesting, I think all of us on this call have been involved with automotive for some time, and we've seen how opinions change and how some opinions stay the same. An example is, my granddaddy's granddaddy bought a Chevy, and that's all I'm going to buy, a Chevy, or pick your brand. And we've seen a little bit of that change over the past couple months because of inventory constraints. And that, I don't know if that's good. I don't know if that's bad, but I know that it's there. So for people who are certainly locked to a particular brand because of legacy or because of, that's just what they're familiar with. The market is saying people are finding success, maybe looking at things that they hadn't considered in the past, because as you had alluded to in the earlier part of the conversation, cars are good now. Cars are good. It's really hard to say, that one is dramatically better than another. So if somebody's offering you some really great service, either online or in person, and the vehicle's making it's handling your transportation needs, maybe give it a shot. Whereas somewhere, 2 or 3 years ago, somebody may have been reluctant to do so and just said, hey, I'll wait the 2 or 3 months to get exactly what I want. That may not be as appropriate now as it used to be.
Excellent. Nick, anything to add to that?
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, we actually have 2 different data sources, one that show what people intend to do online, and then also what are they doing actually when they're in the dealer. And kind of like what Matt's saying, they're intending to be loyal. They want to stay with the same brand, but when they actually are confronted with the inventory shortages, they end up buying something different. And so I think, there's a lot of tools out there. TrueCar has a lot to help make that process as easy as possible. Hopefully you can try to make it fun as well. Cars are exciting things and they're a big purchase. And, you mentioned some people go into the process, they know what they want to get, and they just need to kind of find that radius as big as it needs to be to find that specific vehicle. But if you want to shop by payment or body style, there's a lot of tools to do that as well. And like you and some of the others have said, that auto quality has been moving up for everybody over the last 10, 20 years. And so there's a lot of good vehicles out there, and people might be surprised at something that they might not have considered 10 years ago, and they get in it and drive it and they really like it.
Sure. I mean, they might even decide to go over to an electric vehicle at this point in time. There's so many new options. Absolutely. Yep. And Ted?
So the only other thing I'd add to what they said is just, make sure you're doing your homework up front, do the research, know what these things are going for, know what you qualify for, and just be prepared to pull that trigger. We hear from people all the time, I have to get this thing today or they're going to sell the car from me, out from under me. And it happens. And then we have to put them in another car afterwards. And it may be a different car than they were already kind of married to. So, do the homework, have everything in place and be prepared to act. And then, to add on to that, if you do act, make sure you got a good deal afterwards too, and check your financing, check check all of the stuff you purchased and make sure that it's in line. Because sometimes people get a little bit, enamored with the car buying experience and that new car smell, and they come home and scratch their head and wonder what they just got themselves into. Don't always have to be attached to that either. And that's where the refinances come in and so forth. So.
Yeah, well, it's good to know that the refinancing options are out there too, if there's any loan remorse. So
Yep.
Thank you all so much for joining today and making it a lot easier for our AAA members to do their homework, because that's what it comes down to, is being prepared, feeling comfortable. And honestly, it's a luxury to be able to do this right from the comfort of home. So thank you all so much. And again, the link to the page where all of our members can access our auto buying program through TrueCar will be in the chat for you. So have a great day, everyone. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye.